Unit circle again with more practice, the second round of practice. A lot of people always ask, how do you convert from degrees to radians? And this is easy with the unit circle because pi radians is 180 degrees. You can just read it right off. Same thing for 30, which is pi over 6, right off the unit circle. Or 150, which is 5 pi over 6. Or 315, which is 7 pi over 4. Things get trickier with 145. You need to take 145, multiply it by pi over 180, and then do the fraction reduction. If you do that right, you should get 29 over 36 pi. And I'll let you do the rest of them, and then I'll put in the answers, so you might want to pause the recording. All right, I'm going to put the answers in now. And hopefully those are correct. Always double check my work. I make no guarantees, although I try to be accurate. That's it. Now, this is the tough stuff. Where in the unit circle does wrapping function equal 1/2 negative root 3 over 2? I've got a unit circle right here. So we're looking for 1/2 negative root 3 over 2. And we can see that's down here. And that's it. So we can say that's at 5 pi over 3. Some people like the radians. Some people like degrees. You could also say it's at 300 degrees. You could also say it's at negative pi over 3 or negative 60 degrees. So that's answers with positive degrees, negative degrees, radians. That's tricky. A lot of people struggle with that. Where on the unit circle does sine of t equal negative root 3 of 2? So now I'm just looking at this side only. And you would say, oh, well, we just found that out. It's 5 pi over 3. Well, let's take a look. Any other spot on here where it equals negative root 3 over 2, and you'd say, yeah, also here. So if we just have the one value, we'd have to give at least two separate answers. 4 pi over 3 here. And you could always go with degrees, 300 degrees, 240 degrees, negative degrees, so on and so on. So you can answer that in an infinite number of ways. So when you get that question, you need to get a domain. You can't just say, oh, anything. And the domain tells us two things: where to look for the answers and what form to give the answer in. Hopefully you have a unit circle in front of you, because I'm going to go off the top of my head. Cosine equals 0 at 90 degrees and 270 degrees. And of course these answers would be wrong, because the answer says give it to me between 0 and 2 pi. So I'd have to answer pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2. If I wanted to be a smart guy and say, oh, it's negative pi over 2, it's the same thing, that would be wrong, because it's not between 0 and 2 pi. So you have to be very careful with these problems. Same thing here, secant equals root 2, so cosine is just 1 over secant. So that would be 1 over root 2, which we rationalize. Root 2 over 2. So where does cosine equal root 2 over 2? Well, I happen to know that it equals that at the 315 degree and 45 degrees. But our answers say negative 90 to 90. So this one won't work. This one's fine. But I still want to use this location if I can. So what about negative 45 degrees? And yeah, that works. That's between negative 90 and 90, and that will get us there on the unit circle. So these problems are very tricky. You have to think about them, and you have to get used to practicing them. So here are Four questions. Going to zoom in a little bit, which will mess things up. I want you to try these four. Give a positive degree, negative degree, and positive radian. And I'm going to do them in a second, so give it a shot. So we're at 120 degrees, which is negative 240 degrees, which is 2 pi over 3 radians. Here we're at 225 degrees, which is negative 135 degrees, which is 5 pi over 4 radians. Here we're at 270 degrees, which is negative 90 degrees, which is 3 pi over 2. And here we're at 210 degrees, negative 150 degrees, and 7 pi over 6. Sorry, I'll leave that up for a second. Now, same thing, I'm just going to fill out answers. Not going to go through them. So pause it, try them, and then check your work. You know, undefined is always tricky. Tangent is sine over cosine, which is y over x. So the question is, where does x equal 0? And the answer is at pi and 3 pi over 2. So there's your first 6. Pause it if you want to write them down. Here's 6 more. Give it a shot. One of them is frustrating, so don't get hung up on it. Now I'll do them. One of the things that helps, in case you're not quite clear on where all these numbers are coming from, is to actually try it. Go to 0 and 180 and find out what tangent is there and see how I unwrap the problem. This is impossible. And I wrote that in and it was a mistake, but I actually kind of like leaving it in there. Secant can never equal 0 because it's 1 over cosine. It's impossible. It'd have to be 0 over something, and it isn't. So there's your answers. Check them out. Pause if you want, because I'm going to scroll down, and there's 6 more. Try these, and we'll call it a day. This one's interesting. I don't believe there's a solution. Sine equals 1 at pi over 2, but we can't use that, so no solution. That's it. Hopefully this makes sense. And again, if you're confused, say, well, let me go find secant of 7 pi over 6 and see if that actually gets me, pardon me, cosecant of 7 pi over 6. See if that actually gets me -2. If it does, maybe you can unwrap it, figure out how we did that. Good luck.